towards the end of the meeting, but not now. So we have a speaker this evening, Don Londak, who's a master gardener with Cuyahoga County. And Don, my apologies, because I know nothing else about you. So I was wondering if you could introduce yourself and maybe your background and how and when you became a master gardener, and then talk to us about controlling pests without chemicals. That sounds to be very, very exciting. So Don, you're on.
Okay. First of all, can you hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Okay, because I had problems with the sound before. So I'm Don Landick. I'm a master gardener. I took the master garden. I started the master gardening process just before I retired. And you know, my training actually, I worked at University Hospital. I was in a chemistry department. Or actually, I was the director of the labs. But my background is clinical chemistry. So, you know, gardening without chemicals has always been an interest to me. Can I go ahead and share? Can you see my screen or no?
Misty?
I do not see your screen.
Okay, oh gosh, I'm gonna screw this up. I'm gonna click the share screen and let's see what happens.
Okay. And by the way, anybody has a question, just use chat until after Don's talk, and then you can unmute and talk directly. So Don, I can see your screen.
Did I do it right?
And full screen. Yep, you're on.
Oh my gosh, talk about dumb luck. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we're gonna talk about managing pests in the garden without chemicals. And when I say without chemicals, you'll see what I mean, because I'm talking about extracts of other plants, which is technically a chemical, but we'll get into that. So what we're going to discuss is the following. What are pests? Integrated pest management, which is something the master gardeners really push. What does without chemicals mean? How about insecticide extracts? I'm going to talk about my three favorite neem, Bacillus subtilis and Bacillus thuringiensis. We're going to talk about good preemptive procedures that should be followed. Also, a little bit about pests based on plant family. Certain pests love a certain family, and then there's some pests that love everything. Plant resistance. We'll talk about weed pests. And deer and rabbit, there's not much I'm going to say about that. Build a fence. So let's start. This is always the goal, right? To have this beautiful garden. And I would love to tell you these are gardens that I either worked in or they're my own gardens, but that would be a big lie. I typed in Google, I said, beautiful gardens, and these came up. Reality is some of the most productive and healthy gardens, they might not get an award for beauty, but regardless, we're for functional. Okay, now we're going to talk about pests. Insects, pests. Other plants, weeds, pests. Bacteria, fungus, pests. And this is the era of COVID, I found the word pest sort of interesting. It originates back to the 1300s. When we had the bubonic plague, and then it was adopted by the French in 1500. It meant deadly and contagious disease. Today, it means noxious, destructive, or troublesome person or thing. So we're going to be talking about the things today. Now, integrated pest management is something that is really, really, I think, a great way for gardeners to sort of look at the whole process. When you walk in the garden, the first thing you should be doing is, any damage, assessing the quantity, if there's any damage. Do you see anything under the leaves? Everything okay? And if you do see some things, maybe some aphids, you identify it. What type of pest is it? Or is it a beneficial insect? But most likely a pest. And then in your own mind, because everybody's different, you sort of have to set thresholds or guidelines in terms of when you're going to trigger your actions. Some of the things we're going to be talking about today are the actions you're going to use. And I've seen in some community gardens where there's just a very little, a few insects, and people want to, they're pulling out a gallon of neem oil and they're spraying. And then there's some that, half the garden is being devoured and they're deciding maybe they should do something. So you decide on what approach and methodology you're going to use to control the pest problem based on your feelings, and controlling and addressing the pest problem is the next thing. And we're going to talk about some of the means of doing that. And we'll talk about some preventive measures. And then again, after you take all these actions, you go back and monitor. And this is basically, you monitor, you hit the threshold that you set for yourself, you control it, and then there's prevention, and you repeat. So we're going to talk about control. Okay. So what do we do for control? There's biological controls, and we're going to talk about beneficial insects. Which is becoming that could become a whole separate talk on itself. It's becoming a pretty big business. But there's beneficial insects. There's BT, Bacillus thuringiensis, Bacillus subtilis. So these are biological controls. Then you have the cultural controls. How do you actually take care of your vegetables? Are you watering, constantly watering from above and you getting fungus on your plants? Are you overwatering, underwatering? I mean, these types of things. Then there's mechanical controls. This is, turning over the soil, rototilling when appropriate, using these yellow sticky cards for catching, say, certain types of insects. And then the chemical control. Okay, when I say chemical in this discussion, we're talking about synthetic chemical substances that are developed to kill insects. So anti-pest substances that are not considered chemicals. There are, and they're approved for organic gardening. These are natural substances that you extract from other plants. And even though they're natural and approved for organic gardening, they all carry EPA warning signals. And the lowest, I should say, but it's number 4, toxicity level 4. They don't require any kind of warning signal. Category 3, you have to say the word caution. Category 2, you have to use the word warning. And category 1, which I would never use, is called danger, okay? So let's talk about insecticide extracts. Where do they come from and are they useful? Well, the first is neem, okay, which comes from the seeds. Sometimes they put the leaves in there too, but mainly the seeds from Azodirachta indica. It's a tree from Southeast Asia. We'll talk more about that shortly. Another is nicotine, believe it or not. I had to put this in because this is tree smoking. Tobacco, right? What's interesting is in 2014, the EPA would not allow any more nicotine products used for killing insects. Nicotine, when it's extracted as nicotine sulfate, it absorbs in the skin very easily. And it's toxic to just so many mammals. Not only humans, but I mean, the squirrels and the chipmunks and everything else. So this is no longer being used. Rhiannon. Rhiannon is an extract that comes from the roots of the stem of a Rhiannon species. It's moderately toxic to humans, but incredibly toxic to dogs. So I take that off my list too. You know what this is? It's perithiums, and they're just chrysanthemums, and it generates the substance called perithiums. What's interesting with this, it's very common. It's been used many years to control mosquitoes, fleas, flies, moths, ants. One thing it is relatively toxic to what mammal is cats. So if you have cats, I'm sorry to put that in there, it's not something I'd want to use. Rotenau, okay, the local carpus, stems, the roots. It's a pretty good insecticide, but is incredibly toxic to fish. In fact, in the in the state of Wisconsin, they had a lake that was so full of non-species fish. I mean, people were dumping their goldfish and their koi in it. So they put the rotenau in there, killed all the fish, eventually broke down, and then they stocked it with native species. So it's not something that we want to talk about. Sabadilla, the sabadilla plant, the seeds are very efficient at killing pest insects. And there's some beneficial insects that aren't impacted by it, except honeybees. This kills honeybees. So we take this off the list too. So what do we end up with? We talk about neem. That comes from the azadirachtin. So it's neem oil, neem soaps, all kind of forms of the product. And you have to read the directions very carefully because each one's a little different. As I said, it comes from the azadirachtin indica tree, Southeast Asia, grows in India. And actually, what's interesting is this tree, well, actually, in India, they've been using neem oil and extracts of the azadirachtin tree for many, many, many years. And it wasn't until 1959 when there was a German entomologist following a locust raid in Sudan. He was following the locusts, and he noticed that this tree was pretty much untouched by the locusts. So they start studying the tree, and they found, 70 different extracts coming from it. And the biggest, most common was azadirachtin, and it had the best insect fighting substance. It's considered non-synthetic biological pesticide to be used in organic gardening, but it has to use the word on the package caution. Okay, so that's number 3. Now, this is what it would look like structurally. It's basically carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And that's it. That said, it acts as an insect regulator, and by that, it's anti-feedant. So the insects that are exposed to it either lose their appetite and they really don't want to eat, and they don't, oviposition and ovisoid, they don't like to lay their eggs in that area or on it. And if they do, and some do, the eggs don't develop and hatch. The number of successful hatching of insects from the eggs is minimal. It breaks down though in 100 hours, so it has a 50-hour half-life. So you're going to see when you read the directions on the bottles, everyone's a little different. It's considered safe for beneficial insects. It impacts over 200 pest insects. And actually, there's more than 70 compounds. And it's just azadirachtin is the most common and seems to be the one that works quite well. Now, come to my 2 favorite bacteria. This is Bacillus subtilis and Bacillus thuringiensis. Now, this is called a scanning electron micrograph. You can see it's 20,000 times enlarged. And this just shows the surface of the 2 bacteria. Now, the Bacillus subtilis gives off a substance that inhibits mycelial growth in fungus. So it doesn't kill the fungus, but it inhibits so that the mycelium doesn't really grow well and subdues the growth of it. Now, Bacillus thuringiensis, on the other hand, we want to take a look what's inside of it. Oop, I figured I'd do that. All right, so if you take a regular microscope and look inside, and here's like one bacteria, you'll see two things that stick out. It's this white area and a dark area. This white area is a spore. There's going to be more bacteria produced, and this is the chemical that is produced by the Bacillus thuringiensis, and I'll refer to it from this point on as BT. So what happens is you spray this on the plant, and the larvae eat this. And what happens is and it's very efficient with the larvae of many, many insects. So it gets in the system, it gets in the gut of the larva, and this substance breaks down. It helps break down the walls of the stomach and the intestines of the larva, and the bacteria from inside the larva, as well as this bacteria, the BT, get into the system of the insect and causes septicemia, bacterial infection, and then the insect dies. It sounds sort of terrible, but it's how it works. Now, oh, and by the way, I should say that the Bacillus thuringiensis, it was actually discovered in like 1917, when they had an outbreak of Mediterranean flower moths in Germany, and it was discovered in the German city of Thuringia, hence the name. So let's talk about prevention. Now, number one, in your gardens, just maintain a soil as healthy as you can, okay? Choose resistant varieties, and we'll talk about this a little later. More and more, in this, if you look in the seed catalogs, they talk about this this variety is resistant to, and then they list some of the pests. Plant in the right space, in the right place. Some vegetables like a lot of sun all day long. Some you could do some shade. So it depends where your garden is and how the garden is shaded, or if it's not. Find a way to attract beneficial insects, okay? And there's a couple different insects. There's one in particular, the black wasp, that you really want to attract, and we'll talk about that. And this is very interesting. Consider companion planting. I believe this is on the handout. I hope you guys got the handout. In, I think it was number 2, 3, and 4 of the handout. It talks about companion planting. There's a great article put out by Cornell University. And, you know, just to really simplify this, like carrots, if you plant carrots and plant onions very close to it, or if you don't like onions, there's rosemary and a couple other, and those plants will help repel the insects that like carrots. So it's actually rather interesting. And again, rotate your crops in your garden. You know, keep putting in the same place. There's insects that were there last year, and sometimes they're dormant in the soil if you don't turn the soil over, and they'll come, you know, and this is a problem I have. I'll put the tomato plants in the same place every year. Now, row covers are very effective, and we'll talk about that. It allows light and water in, keeps the insects out. And there's some insects that come overwinter as adults, so they're coming out, they're hungry, they're looking to eat some leaves and then lay their eggs. And in this case, if you got it covered, they're going to be going over here to your neighbor's plot. And the row covers, they have a variety of different row covers. Some are very, very light. Some obviously they're not. Water the soil, not the foliage. You find a few pests, you don't panic, okay? Because you have thought this out ahead of time. Some you want to maybe leave on there so you can attract the beneficial insects. Handle a small outbreak. It could be anything from pulling it off the leaf and discarding that has bugs on it. And and monitor the situation. Be proactive, not reactive. Now, let's talk about some of these resistant varieties. If you notice, some of the seed catalogs are coming out, they're looking like small phone books. They go into detail and they talk about all the different resistant varieties. And we'll talk about some of them if you like. We'll talk about that. Now, some people, when we say genetically modified organisms, they cringe, as I frankly, I had a problem with it. But I did some digging on this. 94% as of 2018, so it's even more now. 94% of all the soybeans planted in the United States are genetically modified. Same with the cotton crop. They run 94%. 92% of all corn planted in the United States has been genetically modified. And when we say genetically modified, they've manipulated the genes to, and this is great oversimplification, to make the plant, say, less tasty to the insects, okay? And it's in the genes. And again, gross oversimplification, but it started with crown gall disease. They studied that. They learned how the plasmid of the bacteria gets into the tree and it causes crown gall disease. Then scientists start using it to put in the genes they wanted. Now they use these particle guns. I think it's gold particle, real small gold particles. They put, again, gross oversimplification, but just to give you an idea, it's happening, and it happens frequently. In fact, I stuck this in last minute. I read about this tomato. Usually all these genetically modified plants are they go to commercial farmers and they're not available to the everyday gardener. Well, the EPA just approved this year, and I think Burpee was selling this. They were these purple tomatoes, and they're actually genetically modified. They took the gene sequence that's responsible for flavonoids, and they found that in snapdragons, the flavonoids were really high. So they took it and they stuck it in a tomato plant, and then you got these purple tomatoes, and flavonoids are basically very helpful, healthy. And now these tomatoes have the same level of flavonoids, which has a variety of different, like it can help battle different types of diseases. It has the same level as blackberries and blueberries. So this is, you see this somewhere coming out. Let's get back on topic. I couldn't help myself. Okay, now we're going to talk about insect infestation. I'll go by different insect groups and by families. The insects I'm talking about were actually, when I put this talk together, the folks at Ohio State came back and said, we don't particularly like the insects that you picked to talk about. We want you to talk about, and they gave me a list of the insects by family, because they said, this is what we get calls about. And these are the ones that we find in your area. So I says, okay. So just in case you're wondering, like, why is he talking about this? There are a couple insects that we're going to start talking about that eat all of this. And that's the cutworm. They will they will decimate your cabbage, carrots. They like grapes, potatoes, squash, tomatoes, lettuce, alfalfa. They go after the hay crops. If you have grass seed, and they'll eat the little sprouts that come from the grass seed. It's rather remarkable. They overwinter as these full-grown larvae. They come out, they're very hungry, and they start at the base of your plant and they work their way up. That's why they call cutworms. Sometimes they'll just chop the little plants down. What is very helpful, if you have soda bottles or little plastic bottles, cut the bottom, cut the top. It's a great barrier. Also, cardboard around the plant. has been very helpful too. Also, a little diatominous earth makes it also a little bit harder for the insect to move about. It makes them uncomfortable, I guess. But anyway, these are the best for cutworms. They come pretty early. They're probably starting to come out now. It's been a warm spring. The other insect that is here in the state is the flea beetle. Now, you know, there's different flea beetles, but they seem to all sort of work around the same time together. Like potato flea beetle, you got the corn flea beetle is B, the grape flea beetle, the red-headed flea beetle. What else? We got sweet potato flea beetle. It's let's see, striped or pale flea beetle, the striped flea beetle, and of course the spinach flea beetle. Regardless, they come out, they overwinter as adults, so they're out. They're hungry, they want to eat, mate, and lay eggs. And these have been very helpful. They're yellow, sticky cardboard. It's a thin cardboard, and the yellow color seems to attract the insects, and it sticks, and they stick on there, and that's it. They're out of commission. The adults really, once the temperature hits 50 degrees and it's pretty consistent around 50, they're on their way. Also, a nice mechanical is the row covers. Put the row covers on, that'll block them, and they don't lay the eggs. And they lay the eggs pretty much at the base of the plant so that the larvae can eat the roots. Let's talk about the brassica family. So we got radishes, turnips, cabbage, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, kale, a number of weeds too. And what do we have? The biggest is aphids. And you're going to hear, I'll be talking about aphids repeatedly. There are over 4,000 species of aphids, okay? Now here we have the cabbage aphid, nice green ones here. And we see this one here, it's brown, it's dead. That's because it was infected by a beneficial insect called the black wasp. The black wasp somehow lays its eggs inside the aphid, and the eggs hatch and the larvae eat from the inside and move out. And one of the ways to attract the black wasp, they love alyssum. If you plant that in the garden, a row of that, it's great. Cabbage looper. Another insect that's easily controlled with BT. BT really is effective here. So you spray a little BT on the cabbage. If you don't want to hand pick it, and the BT will take care of this in a half day. Now, one thing that has popped up, people will say, well, we spray BT, Bacillus thuringiensis all over the vegetables. Does it affect humans? And the answer is no. BT does not. If you ate some lettuce with BT on it or cabbage, it doesn't have the same, it's not going to eat the cell walls of your intestine or stomach. Same thing with the cabbage moth. It overwinters as not as adult, obviously, but as a mature pupa. So when things get warm, it's out, laying eggs, and this is what you see. BT is wonderful, works great on it. Legumes, bees and peas, there's others, but that's the biggest one, the biggest problem. And we have the pea aphid. They're rather large. They run around 3/16 of an inch long and a 1/16 inch wide. They have a nice, strong proboscis. It goes right into the plant to, take the juices out. So here we have the alyssum flowering. This is also the target of the black wasp, and it works very good. Again, as I said, there's so many aphids. There's 4,000 species. Now, the Mexican bean beetle. It spends most of its time on the leaves, and as you could see, we have everything from the eggs to the adult, the Mexican bean beetle. I know it might look like a ladybug. It always has 16 dots, not 15, not 14. It's always 16. If you spray neem oil, it encourages the bug to move off the plant and move on. Yeah, it works. BT works wonders on the larva. So that's both very effective. Solanaceae family. What are we talking? Tomatoes, potatoes, eggplants, peppers, and of course, more aphids. Potato aphid here, and this is the green peach aphid. It appears the green peach aphid has more of an appetite, it not only goes after potatoes, it likes tomatoes, eggplants, and peppers, okay? Again, black wasp, you want to attract it, okay? But, you know, even with the aphids, neem oil will encourage them to move off the plants, move away. It slows the population down, acting as ovocyte. Neem oil works. BT will not. Here we have the Colorado potato beetle. And this is interesting. The potato beetle, both the adult and the larva, have a tendency to move to the top of the plant. It seems to like the soft, tender leaves more so than some of the other insects. It also lays eggs on the top. And the same thing, BT works, neem oil works. What they have done though, if you have a small plot and you got your potatoes and you have an infestation, people have used propane torches, those handheld torches. They light it and they actually burn the top of their potato plants, kills all the insects. Yes, it burns the top of the potato plants, but they recover quickly. And people have been pretty pleased with that approach. So that's another approach. Then we got the hornworm. Okay, this one overwinters as a pupa in soil and debris. Oftentimes when we get an infestation of these, it's not a lot. You can almost hand pick them all off. But what's interesting when you're, and BT will work on this too, but when you're hand picking them, sometimes you'll see these white cocoons on here. This is from the braconid wasp. Leave these alone. Let them on the plants because these will do in the larva and the wasps will spread. Now, one common fungus with plants, with tomatoes, is the anthracnose fungus. And oftentimes people will do a pretty good job not, watering their tomato plant, from the top constantly, but yet they'll still get the fungus. And what some have claimed is that the seeds actually have the spores of this fungus. So there's been a recommendation that if you take the seeds and place them in water that's 122 degrees and maintained at that temperature for 25 minutes, you're basically pasteurizing your seeds and you're good to go. The spores are gone and you shouldn't have the problem. Cucurbita, pumpkins, zucchini, squash, gourds, cucumbers. What do we have? The cucumber beetle. This adult overwinters, comes out in the spring, it's hungry, eats, flies to the plants. It will lay its eggs at the base. Neem oil, again, works great. Row covers, because sometimes this comes out a little bit later. They come out after, the adults come out after we have some 70-degree days consistently. So you put row covers on your plants, that keeps them off too. Then we got the squash bugs. Now, if you're into squash, these insects, they have some plant-resistant varieties. They're not GMOs, but they've been, carefully selected and grown over time to somehow apparently make the plant unattractive or less tasty for the insects. And these resistant squashes, it's butternut, royal acorn, sweet cheese, and black zucchini. They're pretty good at keeping these squash bugs off. Again, you know, if you see this, neem oil, BT will work. This is the last insect here, the squash vine borer. If you like squash, cucumbers, pumpkins, marshmallows, watermelons, they lay their eggs on the vines. And what happens, the larvae dig into the vine and obviously they grow, eat, and they come out and destroy the vine. And it's destroyed actually as they're growing, moving along. What they've done, and some gardeners have done this very successfully, they take BT, they go to get a syringe, and then they inject the BT into the vine, and lo and behold, it destroys the insect, and the plant's fine. Now, when you're trying to identify insects, there are so many apps now coming out that help identify insects. This one claims 95.28% success rate. But, you know, I'm not saying one's better than the other, but there are apps that are very helpful. They also have apps for fungus identification. Now, let's talk a little bit about weeds. I think this is number 7. Yeah, on your handout, it's still up. It's a great presentation. They'll probably keep it up for a long time. It's about organic weed control. And, you know, bottom line is it's a lot of hand picking. But it's organic weed control. It's a really nice topic. And, you know, it talks why you weed, you know, and it's, you know, you want to reduce the competition and with your plants, weeds harbor pathogenic organisms. Sometimes people are allergic or allergic to them. What I found very interesting is they refer to the soil as a weed seed bank as it keeps giving. Oh, wait, and actually I did a little, and if you listen to that presentation, they'll talk about this, but there's other studies and other presentations that really get into this, and it's fascinating. They've measured the size of the seed. They've expressed it mathematically how far the seed will fall into, work its way into the soil. What insects and nematodes will help bring the seed down and also bring it back up, how long the seeds will live, when the seeds will germinate. It just goes on, and it's like, wow. So you come away with agreeing that the soil is a true weed seed bank that will forever give. Now, let's talk about some plants, or not plants, weeds. Well, they're plants. Annual broadleaf weeds. Now, you guys know this already. You got your annual weeds and your winter weeds. The annuals, the summer weeds or spring weeds, they grow in the spring, they seed in the fall. The winter, they start growing in the fall, and they finish up their job early winter, midwinter. So what we have here is lamb's quarters and purslane. Both are summer annuals. And by the way, last presentation I gave, somebody noted that this is very popular and is eaten in the Asian community as in their salad. I don't know. They said it's a little bitter. Ragweed, another summer annual. Galansoga, summer annual. You got the pigweed, redroot pigweed. That's a summer annual. And then you got these 2 winter annuals, chickweed and shepherd's purse. Then you have the biannual weeds, sort of like carrots. You got the wild mustard, and the biannual, the first year, it's basically this rosette of leaves that grow in the base. This isn't a good image of it, but it's this is the yellow rocket here. And then the second year, this it dies back, and then boom, in this next year, takes off like a rocket, yellow rocket, okay? And this is wild mustard. It's a biannual. And then you have the perennial broadleaf weeds and the grass weeds, which are like part of my family. What we have here is the yellow wood sorrel. It's, they say, a weak perennial. My yard is a strong perennial. Then we have a perennial, which is the field bindweed. Very common one, yellow nutsedge, perennial. It's a grass. And this is the quackgrass. It's perennial. Then we have the yellow foxtail, the famous crabgrass, large crabgrass, and then witchgrass. These are the most common in our area. And again, one of the things they talk about in the organic weed program, don't let a weed seed drop. Easier said than done, but don't let a seed drop. You watch for contamination in soils that you purchase, or soil amendments. You can use weed barriers. I've worked at I can't remember the name of the school. They put weed barriers in the gardens, and they lasted about 4 years. And then after that, the weeds just took it over. Remember the soil's a weed seed bank it keeps giving. There's mechanical controls. If your garden is close to a field, cutting and mowing the field to keep the seeds down. Soil disturbance, such as rototilling, soil inversion, all works. And if you want to know your weeds, there's an app for weeds too, Weed Identifier. This, really, I think fencing is about the only way to keep the rabbits and the deer out. There's an interesting handout. In the handout, I think it was number, I wrote it down somewhere here. Yeah, 9, 10, and 11. It talks about deer. And what they find is that deer are incredibly, they're very nervous. They'll get scared easily. So when you put something up, it will repel them for a short time, but deer will quickly learn, oh, this is always there. It's no threat. So you got to switch it around. Again, quickly learns. And it's amazing that the deer keep learning and learning, what's a threat. And based on this picture, I'm assuming that this lady's out here every day scolding the deer, and the deer just standing there watching. So that's it. Any questions?
Thanks,
Okay,
Don.
about earwigs.
Go
Pardon?
ahead. What was the question?
What about earwigs?
Earwigs. Wait.
Can you do anything about earwigs?
Yeah. That I know neem oil has some, but I don't think the BT will work. But the neem oil will. Keeps them away.
But every night they'll climb up on the blossoms.
Yeah. Try the neem oil
Right.
on the leaves.
I'm not sure if I missed the handout or not. Did anybody get the handout? If so, where do I get it?
I don't think the handout was sent out. Let me check with Jess to see how we can get it to everybody.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah,
trying
the
to see if I.
The
sent it
handout's
out.
good because I have the links on there, so you don't have to type in these long links. You just click on it and it'll take you right to it.
Oh, and
I'll
it looks
send
like
it.
we have Jess on.
Jess is
I'll
here.
Yeah, I'll send it out when I send out the recording tomorrow.
You mentioned this BT a few times. What is BT?
Bacillus thuringiensis.
And where is that obtained?
Oh, there's a number of different stores that sell it. It comes as like a I say a powder. It's like and you mix it in with water, and you just follow the directions and you spray it. It usually has a surfactant in there too, so it sort of like sticks onto and spreads nicely on the leaves.
Is there a common name for that?
I don't know. There's so many different. I just look up for BT. I mean, you can look on the computer and look it up on the web, and you'll see all the different companies that sell BT. It comes in little packets. And they all have different names. So
Okay.
Would that powder stuff that you can get called 7, would that have BT in it?
no, I don't believe it does.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll see on this it'll say Bacillus thuringiensis or BT, one of those two things.
Don, someone else recommended horticultural oil. I purchased it on Amazon. It looks like it was off of Monterey Bay area. Do you know anything about that one as well?
No, what did it say in terms of content? Like, what is it happening?
Took a screenshot of it. Hang on just a second. I'm hopefully can say stuff. It's really small print.
I don't know. I was wondering the same
Let
thing.
me go get the bottle.
Okay.
Okay.
So while
Yeah.
Shannon was looking, and somebody might have covered this already while I was reading the chat, but in the chat, there's a question, what do you recommend for spider mites?
Oh, there's two. Again, neem oil, there's, I can't remember, there's a beneficial insect that goes after spider mites, and I don't remember what that was. But neem oil will work. I know I keep coming back to neem oil, but you know, I'm so impressed with it.
Will that probably work on thrifts?
It will. I actually have used it on my African violets. I had some thrifts and worked.
Don, it says mineral oil, other ingredients, contains petroleum distillates, yeah. Unsulfonated residue of mineral oil.
Interesting. Yeah. Oh, look at that. Okay.
So I can add to that if you want me to.
Yeah, please.
So that's a great product that she held up. Dormant oils have come a long way. They're much more refined now, and they can be applied on. You'll want to test, of course, but they can be applied on most foliage plants. You generally do not want to apply an oil on a plant that's going to be a hot, sunny day. That's the only issue with oils, is that you want to do it on a cool morning, hopefully on a day that isn't blazing hot. But they're designed now to be used on foliage. Originally, dormant oils were much heavier, and arborists would spray them on trees, and they could only do that in February and March to suffocate eggs and insects. And if you got it on green foliage, it would
Yes.
wilt and burn the foliage. But now what you find in the local garden centers are all summer oils, and they're very successful. I had to step away for a family phone call for a little bit, and I don't know if anybody talked about a product called Lost Coast Plant Therapy.
No.
Okay. So I believe the name of the company is called Lost Coast. Lost is L-O-S-T, and Coast is C-O-A-S-T. And then I believe the product is called Plant Therapy. So if you Google Lost Coast Plant Therapy, their company will come up. It's new to me And some good friends of mine growing different tropical plants brought it to my attention maybe a year or so ago. And I've been using it on so many tropicals, and I love it.
Wow.
It functions, it is an oil, and it is great as a fungicide and as an insecticide. It will kill any insect that it touches. It'll kill mites, it'll kill aphids, it'll kill whiteflies, it will smother mealybugs. So it does a great job of killing eggs and adults. And it has amazing fungal properties too, because it inactivates all the fungal spores and they can't germinate. So what's in it is all food grade products. What's in it is soy oil, peppermint oil, and citric acid. Citric acid is what's in our vitamin C and our oranges, our citrus. Those are the only 3 products that are in there, and it works great. Now, I have never done it on dahlia foliage, so someone's going to want to test that first. I do know I have a couple of plants that lantana. I don't know if you know the tropical plant called lantana, but it does not like it, and its leaves will brown when I spray it. But 99% of everything else I've ever used it on, the plants have tolerated it, including African violets, with no issue. So I just share that product, that name. You can Google it, and if you go on their website, they offer you a 2-ounce free sample. I think you have to pay shipping.
No, I appreciate it. It's Lost Coast.
It's called Lost Coast Plant Therapy. So so I'm a believer of the dormant oils, the one that was held up. You should have some and get to know them and use them and get to understand when they're valuable and when you shouldn't use them. And also get to know, I would suggest you try that free sample of Lost Coast Plant Therapy. They want you to mix it at 1 ounce per gallon, which is a lot. So the 2-ounce sample they get you, that'll only make 2 gallons that you can spray, but that's more than enough to test on a bunch of your favorite plants. And then if you like it and if it works, then you go buy a small bottle of it from them.
Thank you.
And Don, there are a couple more questions in the chat. There's a question, is there a systemic application that would help battle Japanese beetles for dahlias?
Japanese beetles? I'm not aware of specifically for Japanese beetles. I'm sorry.
And then the other one, is there anything that helps with those little tiny white flies?
For me, I've had the neem oil and actually that yellow sticker. I've been putting those in the garden. It's amazing how it attracts white flies too.
This Lost Coast Plant Therapy obliterates white flies.
Look at that.
They just disappear. They just melt.
How about Japanese beetles?
I wouldn't mind hearing what everybody does. No, not everybody, but I wouldn't mind hearing a few thoughts on Japanese beetles. We pick them off. We just, as we do our gardening around the yard, we just smash and grab and break them off. I don't think you want to be putting systemics on any flowering plant, because that's just going to be potentially too harmful to your bees. So they're tough. You know, you can kill Japanese beetle with insecticides like 7 and items like that. So you Google and you'll see a bunch of chemicals for it, but then that's spraying all sorts of chemicals. So we pick them off, but we're not in an area where we get inundated by them. I mean, we'll pick off 30 or 40 in a morning, but I know some people, they have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them at the same
And so
time.
what I'll do is I pick them off too, and instead of smashing them, because that's just so gross to smash them for me, I'll put them in just a cup of water with soap in it, so soapy water. So if you throw them in the soapy water, that traps them and kills them pretty quickly.
Or a little bottle with 70% isopropyl alcohol. Same thing, you just toss them in and they stop moving pretty much immediately. But they have a smile on their face when they go.
I purchased the Bugzooka. I saw it on a video, and it's just a spring-loaded suction thing. And I go up to the Japanese beetle and I suck it into this little thing, and it has a cup about yay big. And then I take it to the chicken yard and let them finish him off.
Oh, that actually sounds like fun.
And there's one more in the chat. Sharon asked she would like more information on pyrethrum being toxic to cats. I don't know if I said that correctly or not.
Pyrethrum.
Yes. All I know is, I mean, it doesn't necessarily kill the cat. It makes them very sick. I mean, that's basically all I can tell you about it.
Just for a while after spraying, or?
No, for a while, it's got to, you know, but again, you know, it keep the cats out of the area, but it takes it. And when I say a while, the material has to be, well, we've actually heard of a case where it was sprayed, the cats ate the leaves after it dried a day after, and the cat was really, they had to take it to the vet.
And Jess said that Ann Ball might be a good person to ask. She's a vet too.
I'm sorry, when I walked away, did you answer the question, should be alternating 1 week BT and 1 week neem oil?
No, I mean, it depends what's going on. The BT is great for larvae. If you don't have any larvae and you just have the adult BT, I mean, neem oil. If there's larvae, then you put the BT. BT won't do anything for the adults.
Okay, I'm not right now, but last year I fought thrips that visited my snapdragons, and then I do ranunculus anemones, and aphids have already shown up. So I've sprayed them off, I pinched them, I've stayed on top of it, and I've put the horticultural oil on just once so far. But I want to be proactive versus dealing with the problem this year.
And someone is asking if neem is safe for honeybees.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
If there are any other items in the chat that I might have missed, if anybody has something else and wants to go off mute, feel free to. I think I got most of them.
Can we go back to that neem and the honeybees?
Yes.
Don, when you say it's safe for honeybees, are you meaning that once it's been applied with no bees around and it dries, at that point, if a bee lands on the flower and walks around, it'll be okay? Or are you suggesting it can be sprayed while they're actively flying and walking around the flowers?
I have, and we've done this. We've actively sprayed while they're walking around on the flowers. There seems to be no issue whatsoever.
Or how do you know the bee lives?
I mean, I'm based on the literature that I get from Ohio State and stuff. They said
Great,
it didn't.
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
One more question came in the chat. Mark, will Lost Coast help with powdery mildew?
Yes, Lost Coast will end powdery mildew on dahlia foliage, assuming Lost Coast works on dahlias, and I know I'm talking to our dahlia club here. I just have personally not used it on dahlias, but based on the type of foliage dahlias have and the hundreds of other tropicals I have and I've grown them on, I'm confident it'll work. But someone who has a dahlia plant growing, cuttings, whatever, and gets a free sample, try it and let us know. But I'm 99.9% confident you'll be able to spray it and the dahlia foliage will look totally unfazed. When I have white powdery mildew show up on any other tropical plant, when I spray it with Lost Coast, it completely dissolves the powdery spots, and it completely inhibits all the spores, whether you can see it or not. You know, if you take a magnifying glass, if you find one spot of powdery mildew on a leaf, if you take a magnifying glass, you'll see that that whole leaf is covered with little mycelia that you can't see with your naked eye, and only in a few areas does it puff out to a spore producing structure, and that's what we then see as those white spots. So by the time you have white spots, you've had powdery mildew having fun on your foliage for weeks earlier. So when you use something like Lost Coast, and trust me, I have no contact with Lost Coast. I'm just a happy customer. When you use Lost Coast and just spray it on the foliage, it wipes out any of the insect eggs or fungal spores or anything that's on the foliage. It just I mean, how would you feel if you were plunged into a vat of peppermint oil? You know, you just curl up and cash it in, and that's what everything else does that has this peppermint oil sprayed on it. Oh, by the way, it smells great. Smells like peppermint oil. And there's no you can spray it on food crops the day you harvest. You can walk in the greenhouse, you know, as soon as you're done spraying it. It's peppermint oil, you know, it's and citrus acid and soybean oil. So I wear a mask and gloves just because I don't want to breathe anything that I'm putting into a mist form at the moment I'm spraying it. But I don't even think the directions say that's needed, but I just do that because it just seems right to me to do it.
And someone put in the chat that they read somewhere that a baking soda and water mixture is good for getting rid of powdery mildew.
Yeah,
Does
that's an old time remedy. Oh, I'm sorry, Don, well, go for it.
No, that is an old time remedy.
It's an old time remedy and it works great, and it just has the chemical ability to change the pH, and it just inhibits the ability of the spores to germinate, and it desiccates the mycelia that are currently on the foliage. It actually works pretty good, but it does leave a white residue. It bothers some people when it comes to products. I never care if my foliage has any kind of white spots or residue in general. Now, yes, you don't want that if you're growing a dahlia for show and preparing it, and you want those last 3 sets of leaves. I understand, but when their plants are young in June and July and you're growing them, I trust you wouldn't be bothered by some white spotting. But baking soda will give you some white spotting, and if you use a soap, a spreader sticker to help it stick, it lasts longer, but those white spots last longer. But that's what you want. You're trying to keep that baking soda on the foliage longer so it can help you. Otherwise, baking soda tends to wash off after a couple of rains or one hard rain.
And it looks like one last question. Any thoughts on stylet oil?
On what?
Stylet oil, STYLET oil. Sharon asked the question. I don't know, Sharon, if you have any additional context.
Well, Tony and Randy Foyth are big on stylet oil, so I just wanted to know if, you had any thoughts on it.
I don't know what it is.
Is that the product that Tony was talking about, and it leaves a white residue also? Was that what he was talking about last
I
year?
think it can
they're
leave a
different.
residue.
They're
Hey,
different.
guys. So
I'm not familiar
oh, go
with the
ahead.
stylet oil. Jerry, go on, please.
So the stiletto oil, that was, I think it's called JMS was the name of it that Tony recommended. My understanding is it's a pure mineral oil, and it doesn't leave the white residue. I think the white residue was when he was trying that clay product,
Right.
and that was something that he mixed. And when he sprayed the foliage, it almost acted like a sunscreen for the plants. But that stiletto oil, I believe it's pure mineral oil. That's another one you want to apply as the sun's going down during the day, and preferably if it's going to be cloudy the next day too, because you're basically putting baby oil on your plants, and if it's sunny, it's going to burn them. Tony swore by it. Tony had a schedule where I think he was applying it every so many days. I might be able to find it in the notes. I will say this from my experience. I bought a big jug of it because Tony recommended it, and I sprayed it on my plants. And personally, I didn't like the way it left my leaves after I used it. So technically, I have a big jug of it. If anybody would like to experiment with it, I could give you some of it. But I want to say, Tony swore by it. Tony loved it. Tony had a schedule, and the way Tony used it, it 100% worked for him. But I can't speak to. My understanding is I think it suffocates the bugs. So if you've got little things, it's like an oil that completely covers the bug, and it suffocates them. So he only wanted to use it when the pollinators were gone for the day, and it gave it a chance to kind of be overnight so that it wasn't so fresh for the sun of the day. So that's all I
Thanks.
know about it.
Thanks, Chris. That's a lot. And that mineral oil, a lot of these summer dormant oils have mineral oil in them, or are mineral oil, which is a highly refined petroleum oil. One other thing I would add, remember that when you use a product like a dormant oil, or this Lost Coast or something like that, or the neem oil, you can use it whenever you want. And I'm talking from the standpoint of insect and fungus resistance. You can use it whenever you want and how often you want, because the insects and the diseases have no ability to build up a resistance to something that fundamentally suffocates them. They can't build up a resistance to that. And so by all means, follow guidelines like Chris just said about not applying oils before a warm sunny day. But separate from that line of thinking, the standpoint of needing to rotate dormant oils and stuff, you don't need to, because the insects and the diseases, like I said, have no ability to build up any kind of resistance, because either it kills them dead or it doesn't. And the next time you spray it, it'll either kill it dead or it won't. It's not like they can build up a resistance to suffocating, to not suffocating, or to not being dissolved by the peppermint oil. So if it works for you and you are okay with how it responds on your foliage, etc., then you apply it whenever you wish to apply it.
Hey, Sharon, one other thing. Quinn wanted to make sure that you don't use pyrethrin. We were listening to this, and Quinn just started saying, Mrs. Swaney can't use that.
Well, that's why I was asking. I've got 4 cats. So, in case there's any new growers, I'm not sure with just the first names. And going back to the fungus and the powdery mildew, keep the bottoms of your plants clean. Come up about a foot or 18 inches and get all the foliage and everything off of them, and that'll really, really pay off.
So I think that's all that we have for the questions and comments in the chat to cover. Don, thank you so much for joining and answering everyone's questions. And I guess
No,
Jared will turn it
Thank you
back over.
for, I learned a lot, so thank you. Okay, thank you, bye.
So Jess, are you taking over?
I actually have a bad cough. So
Apparently not. Okay. So, for business, Misty or Sharon, I did ask you earlier if you have any updates on our sales. And Misty,
I do. Yep. So I can definitely give an update. And I would say overall it's very successful thanks to all the donations and the hard work of everybody with both the tuber sale and the plant sale. We're not quite done with the plant sale yet with the pickup happening. I think there'll be some additional purchases, but ultimately at this point, we're looking at a net total collection for the tubers and the plants as of right now of $10,000, which is ultimately a little less than 3,000 more than what we did last year. So I would say that's wonderful and a great result for the two. And hopefully we'll see even more come in with additional plant sales on Sunday.
thanks. Tammy, did you have anything to add? No, okay. Sharon? Not, okay. Is Nancy with us? I didn't see that Nancy was with us for membership. Mike, you're okay for Sunday?
Yes, I am. 1 to 3 pickup. For those who have ordered stuff, if you've got carriers to take it home in, that would be helpful. And as they said, there are some plants left and they will be available to people who have purchased, and they will be at a discounted price. So that should attract some people.
Is it cash only with those?
And I want to thank Rob, Bob Leonelli, Bob Matusek, and Chris for the help that they gave during the propagation project. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did. I think we probably did too much, but we'll see.
And Mike, thanks so much for you for every year. You just do a fantastic job.
One thing I did want to add, Jerry, we have set aside additional plants for the Midwest.
Okay.
And Chris is going to be taking some plants down to Columbus Sunday to help with their sale too. So we'll be helping them out too.
Elizabeth has asked how to pay at the plant sale pickup. I guess cash or check, huh?
Cash or check, I believe, is the way to go, right?
Yep,
So,
cash or check.
Okay.
Mike, what I'm thinking about it, have we planted at Miller's?
No, I stopped there. They would like that program to continue. They've had some good response. People would like to see some more dahlias. So I'm going to allocate some of the dahlias from the plant sale. Usually put in about 16 out there. So I will take care of that.
Great. Well, don't hesitate to ask for help.
No, thank you. That's easy with the soil over there. You don't even need a shovel. So it'll be fine, but thank you.
Have any of you bought the chicken manure from Tom Sabre, I think is his name, who's a director at Cuyahoga Fair? Anyway, he sells it for $1 a bag, but I don't have the details on that. Has anybody bought from him before? I know Dave.
Do you mean rabbit manure? You said chicken manure.
Sorry, I meant rabbit.
Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Have you bought from him, Pat?
This is Barb Hosta.
Hi, Barb.
And we used to get the bags of rabbit manure from Tom Sabry until my husband's back gave out. But it does add a tremendous amount of nutrients to the soil.
So it's already bagged up, is it?
It's bagged in garbage bags. And a lot of it is, and it's just set outside their black garbage bag. The sun is maturing it. It's pretty gross to spread it, but it does offer, it's also mixed in with peat because of the way, he has like peat trays underneath the rabbits and the droppings drop into the peat. And I use that too when my daughter had rabbits, and it just is amazing nutrients to the soil, but it's heavy, it's wet, and it smells.
Okay. If you're interested in contacting Tom, his email address is rabbitman, RABBITMAN 83 at AOL.com. And that would be the best way to get in contact with him, and then he'll give you details as to where to go, where to get it. It's $1 a bag. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. My guess is he lives over, oh, Barbara, where does he live?
He lives in Strongsville.
Oh, okay.
I don't know his address exactly. It is a little difficulty to getting it. You've got to get the bags from his backyard, then into your vehicle. Dave and my husband used to take a trailer and wheelbarrow it into the trailer. Like I said, it's a bit of backbreaking work because the bags are absolutely loaded.
Great, thank you. I don't see that Ron is with us, Jess, and I'm not really prepared to conduct that conversation that he would have. So I don't have anything else.
I don't have the full details, Jerry. So
Okay, so we'll let that go until perhaps next time. Anybody have any comments or questions?
This is Barb again. I don't have, any questions, but I did want to let people know that because we're an affiliate club of Holden Forest and Gardens, they are having in-person plant sale this Saturday and Sunday. It's their own plants. It's not the big extravaganza that they used to have with a lot of nurseries, coming and gathering. They will have some other vendors. They are not plant vendors. They're, artistic, ceramic, garden decoration type of things. But they do on their website have a list of the plants they'll have available. They have a description of them. If you are a member, you will get in free, and you can shop the plants early from 9 until 10 tomorrow morning.
Thanks, Barb. Yeah, we used to have our plant sale there at Holden and also at Rockefeller, but we haven't done that since COVID.
Yeah, Rockefeller is going on this weekend also, but I don't have any. I think it's just the usual things that they used to have. They'd have the Gardeners of Cleveland has their perennial sale, and they have, of course, the extra cuttings from the Rockefeller greenhouses, which you never know what you're going to get. I mean, there's all kinds of weird things.
Yeah.
But that's also this weekend.
Yeah. It's a really neat place if you haven't been to Rockefeller. There's I think they have that iris garden.
Yes, the iris garden. That's incredible, and that should be in full bloom right now.
Yeah, it's really spectacular. Okay, any other comments, questions, reports? Don't hear any. Hope to see you tomorrow. I don't have the details in front of me, but Jess sent around the details for Tony's memorial service tomorrow afternoon, like 3 to 9, I think it is, something like that. So hope to see some of you there. Anything else? Nope. Well, good luck on growing this summer. I haven't begun to think about planting yet. I'll be out in Colorado next week for a grandson's high school graduation. But I typically plant around Memorial Day or first week of June, first or second week of June. Particularly so that I have some blooms for our shows, which tend to be late in September. Ella, you had a question or just not?
I came in late. Is this recorded that I can check it out on the page, on the DSO page?
Yes, Jess, it
Okay.
is recorded and Jess will send out that information tomorrow, I believe. Is that right, Jess? Okay, along.
I also wanted to thank those that donated because I'm a new member and I got the tubers for joining, and I got my husband's got 4 beds turned over and I can hardly wait to see what happens. Of course, he's real happy about it.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah, so hopefully I have some pictures to share. So I'm excited to get going.
It's wonderful. Your story seems to be one that's very common.
Yeah. But yeah. So thanks for everything you guys do. I'm excited about it all.
Oh, wonderful. Good. Glad to have you. Okay,
Thank you.
anybody else? Nope. Then I guess that's it for tonight, and we'll see you. We have a meeting next month, Jess? Yes. Okay, we'll see you next month. Take care.
Good night.
Hey,
Thanks,
Jerry,